All right, so this is part number 3, I believe, of The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. And today's pretty interesting because we're going to be talking about the personalities of people and kind of the whole purpose of this book. I would say there's a couple different purposes. Uh, a big part is figuring out your definite chief aim. Like what's the goal that you're working towards right now? And if you're familiar with this kind of timeless knowledge, there's a guy by the name of Earl Nightingale who I'm sure we'll see come up quite a bit on this channel. But Earl talks about having a goal. That's pretty much how he defines success, is having a definitive goal. And so Napoleon here, he calls it the definite chief aim. But a big part of this book is also becoming more personable. And going back to Earl Nightingale there, he has a really good video, and I'm going to put a link to it, hopefully, if I can. I don't know how this new channel works. It didn't let me put a link the other day. But you can search it yourself if you want to. If you want to kind of expand on this thought that we're going to be talking about today, there's a video called The Magic Word by Earl Nightingale. And the magic word is attitude. And so both Napoleon Hill and Earl Nightingale, they both have an obsession about how you present yourself, essentially, your attitude towards the world. Because what you put out there to the world usually comes back to you. So if you got a shitty attitude, you're probably going to get shitty attitudes back towards you. And so that's what he's talking about here. This is only going to be a short 3-minute clip from The Law of Success, and then we'll discuss it after. So let me bring this up here. This is, again, Napoleon Hill, and this is our part number 3 of a very long journey together here with The Law of Success. So here we go.
And it is not unreasonable to expect that this introduction alone may give you sufficient understanding of the law to change the entire course of your life. It is the personalities back of a business which determine the measure of success the business will enjoy. Modify those personalities so they are more pleasing and more attractive to the patrons of the business, and the business will thrive. In any of the great cities of the United States, one may purchase merchandise of similar nature and price in scores of stores. Yet you will find there is always one outstanding store which does more business than any of the others. And the reason for this is that back of that store is a man or men who has attended to the personalities of those who come in contact with the public. People buy personalities as much as merchandise, and it is a question if they are not influenced more by the personalities with which they come in contact than they are by the merchandise. Life insurance has been reduced to such a scientific basis that the cost of insurance does not vary to any great extent, regardless of the company from which one purchases it. Yet out of the hundreds of life insurance companies doing business, less than a dozen companies do the bulk of the business of the United States. Why? Personalities. 99 people out of 100 who purchase life insurance policies do not know what is in their policies, and, what seems more startling, do not seem to care. What they really purchase is the pleasing personality of some man or woman who knows the value of cultivating such a personality. Your business in life, or at least the most important part of it, is to achieve success. Success, within the meaning of that term as covered by this course on the 15 laws of success, is the attainment of your definite chief aim without violating the rights of other people. Regardless of what your major aim in life may be, you will attain it with much less difficulty after you learn how to cultivate a pleasing personality, and after you have learned the delicate art of allying yourself with others in a given undertaking without friction or envy. One of the greatest problems of life, if not, in fact, the greatest, is that of learning the art of harmonious negotiation with others. This course was created for the purpose of teaching people how to negotiate their way through life with harmony and poise, free from the destructive effects of disagreement and friction, which bring millions of people to misery, want, and failure every year. With this statement of the purpose of the course, you should be able to approach the lessons with the feeling that a complete transformation is about to take place in your personality. You cannot enjoy outstanding success in life without power, And you can never enjoy power without sufficient personality to influence other people to cooperate with you in a spirit of harmony. This course shows you step by step how to develop such a personality.
So personality, pleasing personality, being personable, having a good attitude. And there's a couple different quotes there. There's a quote that he had on the page there that I thought was pretty interesting, kind of unrelated to the topic today. But the quote was, "No man has a chance to enjoy permanent success until he begins to look in a mirror for the real cause of all his mistakes." And I guess it does kind of tie into it because I feel like there's a lot of people out there, and I've been guilty of this myself in the past, that when things go wrong, you're always looking to blame other people. There's always a reason, an excuse, or whoever, a person, a thing, event, whatever it is, that you blame it on because you don't want to take the accountability for it. And that's part of the attitude, I think, because if you have an attitude that everything's the world's out to get you, then that's the world's going to be out to get you. You know what I mean? Whereas if you look in the mirror and you say, everything that has happened, all the mistakes that I've made are because of me. And that, I think, reflects outwards as well. If that's kind of your attitude, your perception of the world, you're accountable. I think that that's such a huge trait to have, a very important one. And I didn't have notes on this or anything, but maybe I think this is important. This is one thing that really changed for me when I started to do this more. And I've talked about it before, but I do think that it's an important one to think about here. So let me bring up the spreadsheet for today while I talk. So accountability, again, this isn't it's a little bit off topic here, but definitely related to it. But being accountable, taking accountability on anything that happens, anything good and bad, taking accountability for that. And there's two words here, and I want you to give this a shot, because this is something that, as somebody who's kind of not argumentative, but this is something that I struggle with a lot growing up. And there's one day where this just kind of clicked to me, and it was two words, and it was, "You're right." If you're in a discussion with somebody or an argument or anything that, a conversation, and we have this ability to just never quit until we feel like we won. And then we go down these different paths. Some end in very badly, depending on how stubborn the people are. But there's been relationships ruined over arguments and disagreements. Some are political, some otherwise. But if you can just kind of say these words to somebody, either vocally or in a text or an email or anything, if you say these words here, "You're right," very, very powerful words, because that changes whoever you're talking to, whoever you're having this discussion with or argument with. That shows them that you're willing to admit when you're wrong. If you say "you're right," that not only makes them feel really good. Those are pretty sweet words to hear when somebody says that to you. So when you give that energy to somebody, they give that energy back. They're thinking to themselves, "Wow, this person's big enough to say that they were wrong. They were big enough to admit that they were wrong." So when you say these or you type these words, that feels really good on their end, but it also feels really good on your end. When you know you're wrong. I mean, if you're arguing with somebody and you're not wrong, then it's probably just best to part ways with them. But if it's somebody that you get along with, again, the whole kind of course here is to have he calls it a pleasing personality, and have a good attitude. The magic word, this is from Nightingale, which is attitude. And when you're, he kind of talked about the life insurance, which I thought was kind of funny. He had a point in there that said 99 out of 100 people who purchase life insurance do not know what is in their policies. And I think that this is written back in the 1920s. So it'd be a little bit different now. I don't think that there's as much focus. I guess there is. When I bought my life insurance, I didn't know what was in it. I still don't know what was in it. It was 10 years ago. It was just a good buddy of mine. That's why I bought the life insurance, because of the guy that I bought it from. So I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like there's a lot of financial advisors out there who are the exact same way as this. You ask the average person what's in their investment portfolio, most people would have no idea. It was just somebody in their life who had a very pleasing personality that sold them an investment or a fund, or they gave them their business. It wasn't because, I mean, the returns probably was part of it, but any financial advisor you talk to, it's probably 8 to 10% return every year. But people buy from personalities. People buy personalities as much as they buy the merchandise. So that's kind of what you should be working towards, and that's what this law of success book is kind of tailored around, which is becoming more of having a better attitude and becoming more pleasing to other people. And the other part of this too, which I was going to put here, is working in harmony with others. Working in harmony. And so when you think about working in harmony with somebody, is it easier or harder to work with somebody with a very bad attitude, very negative, very off-putting? You know what I mean? It's difficult. So you're never going to be in harmony with them. And what you want to do, I think, this is the takeaway from my perspective anyways, is you want to be pleasing to people. And when you're pleasing to people, it's going to be a much more harmonious relationship, because no matter what you're doing, you can never really do anything on your own. You can only get so far on your own. There's going to be a limit on what you can do by yourself. And so to achieve whatever it is, your chief aim, as Napoleon calls it, you're going to have to work with other people. And so if you can make yourself as pleasing as possible and have the right attitude towards people, then your relationships and your collaborations, you might say, are going to be much more harmonious. And that's going to push you much closer to your definite chief aim, which is kind of the direction you're going to, your long-term goal, the thing that you're working towards. And so that's how Napoleon defined success, is the attainment of your definite chief aim. And I like this part too, without violating the rights of other people. Violating the rights of others. I like that he put that second part in there, because if your chief aim is interfering and obstructing with other people, that's ethically wrong, in my opinion. If you're making a bunch of money, but you're hurting people by doing it, or if you're making a bunch of money, but you're poisoning people by doing it, that to me, I wouldn't consider that a success. But if you are working towards your definite chief aim without violating the rights of others, that is success, according to Napoleon Hill. And it says, regardless of what your definite chief aim may be, you will attain it with much less difficulty after you learn how to cultivate a pleasing personality, because then you're going to be much more harmonious with people. And so there's this other line in here. He said, you cannot enjoy outstanding success in life without power. So that's going to be the next thing we talk about. The next part here is talking about power. You cannot enjoy outstanding success in life without power, and you can never enjoy power without sufficient personality to influence other people to cooperate with you in a spirit of harmony. Again, kind of the purpose of this channel and these segments are going through this book, Law of Success, and other things down the road, but we're going to start with this Law of Success. But kind of my job here is to find the parts of this book that are applicable to people. There's a lot of, I mean, in every book, there's a lot of like fluff and things that I wouldn't say a waste of time, but not a great use of your time. But then there's certain parts of this book that I think are really worth diving into a little bit further and repeating a couple times. So again, I want to repeat that. It says, you cannot enjoy outstanding success in life without power. And you can never enjoy power without sufficient personality to influence other people to cooperate with you in a spirit of harmony. So all this has to do with a pleasing personality, working in harmony with others, having the right attitude. And there is one more part of this that I wanted to talk about, which is cause and effect. And I want people to, I'll probably bring this up quite a bit, but cause and effect. I think that really a lot of people out there have things backwards in terms of cause and effect, effect and cause. But when you think about this, like think about somebody in your life who has a pleasing personality. And think about somebody out there who's very successful. Think about like the most successful person that you know personally, that you've talked to, you've shook their hand, you've had conversations with, you've hung out with, maybe played golf with. Think about the most successful person that you know in your life. Do they have a pleasing personality, or are they an asshole to people? For me, the person that I think of has a very pleasing attitude, a very pleasing personality. And most do. And so I think when the average person thinks about that, when they try to correlate things in their head, they think, well, that person has a good attitude or pleasing personality because they're successful, right? They're like, well, it'd be pretty easy to have a good attitude when you're really rich because they're successful. But the real cause of this is the opposite of that. And I really believe, like, this is how I would have spent the majority of my life thinking, oh, that person has a good attitude. Of course they have a good attitude because they have a lot of money. They're really rich. They're really successful. Of course they have a good attitude. But it's actually the opposite of that. The reality is that person, you just flip it. That person is successful because, this shouldn't be small. We can't bold something small, because they have a good attitude, pleasing personality. And I want you to think about this a lot. Whenever you have like a thought that comes in your head, like where you're judging somebody or you're just assuming something, always consider this. Consider the cause and effect and flip it. For the most part, whatever you think, you're going to want to flip that. So that person is successful because they have a good attitude / pleasing personality. That's why they're successful, because they have a good attitude. They don't have a good attitude because they're successful. The person is successful because they have a good attitude and a pleasing personality. And when they have a good attitude and a pleasing personality, they get along with others. They're in harmony with others. And you get other people in line with what your chief aim is. So that's the lesson today. Kept her under 20 minutes. We've been doing pretty good here. And I'm not going to ask too much. Again, this channel is it's more of a passion project for me, really. I love learning this stuff. I want to teach it so I can learn it better. And I think that this information is so valuable to anybody out there, to Bitcoiners, to somebody working a 9-to-5 job, to business owners. And so that's it. Hope you enjoyed this one today. And we'll talk to you on the next one.